what I did is I decided not to listen to music, not to bring any books with me, and not to watch TV. So for 14 months, my only influences were real things.
I love finding people with inspiring stories and doing audacious things for this podcast, and today's guest does not disappoint. I'm Jason Heath. This is Contrabass Conversations, and we are talking today with Sebastiano Dessanay, who has just wrapped up a humongous adventure. He cycled between all 377 towns, that's right, 377 towns of his native Sardinia, off the coast of Italy, in 377 days. So that's 377 towns in 377 days. And as he was journeying with his bass ukulele on his back, he was chronicling on his blog, on Instagram, photos, video, and musical selections. And we talk about all of that. I just love this project. We had talked, I was looking back at my notes, and in 2018, we'd already been talking about doing an interview. That was a little challenging as you're cycling around Sardinia with unpredictable times of when you're going to get to a town or cell service or that sort of stuff. So we chatted with him just after he wrapped up this journey about how he's going to put it all together, what's next, the highs, the lows. So cool. And definitely follow along with his outstanding website, 377project.com or .org. I can't remember, but we've got it linked up in the show notes, and also Instagram, and just can't wait to see what comes out next from him. Quick shout out to our sponsors: D'Addario Strings, Upton Bass, Steve Swan String Bass, The Bass Violin Shop, Colstein Music, A440 Violin Shop, and Modacity. And we're going to feature one little bit of music from Sebastiano. He, at the end of the day, would write down a piece and he would play it on his bass uke. And so there are 300 some odd other musical snippets also from his journey. You gotta spend some time on this website. You get sucked in for forever. It's so good. So without further ado, please enjoy this conversation with Sebastiano Dessanay. Where's home for you now that you're back off the road?
At the moment, I haven't got a home. I'm staying at my parents' place in Sardinia at the moment, trying to re-establish a normal life. My base was UK, was Birmingham until October 2018 when I started this trip. I actually left my base in the UK because I was planning a move anyway. And I've got some commitments there in 2020. So I will be going to the UK again in February for some gigs. But I've basically left my teaching in the UK last year to complete this project, which will probably keep me busy for the whole year, because the aim is actually to release an album of compositions that I've started writing in the trip, and to publish a book as well of this whole experience. So I'll have to work.
Well, I was wondering, because you put out such wonderful, it's like just begging for a book, what you've put out, and all these wonderful stories, and it's just really cool. Everything about it's like what I fantasize about doing, you actually did. So many of us, like I wake up in the morning, I think like, wow, wouldn't it be cool to bike across California, or and maybe like write about my adventures and take a photo. And here you are actually doing it for like over a year. And I just love everything about it, and the stories of the people that you met in these towns, and how you got these towns of just a couple hundred and the mayor comes and greets you. And then I love these tunes that you put together on your, it's so cool. It's just so, I have so many questions, but like, Just what a great three-dimensional way to experience a place. Because like both like you going through not it by car, but like actually being on the road on your bike. You go, you meet the people, talk to the people, you take the photos, you write the stories, then you write the music and record music for so many of these locations. So like, maybe like how on earth did you come up with this idea, and then how'd you so many people listening are probably wish that they would have the courage to do something like that. So how did you like set things up and just say like, all right, I'm off to bike over a year, across Sardinia? Just tell me about the inspiration behind this.
Yeah, well, to be fair, it's been several ideas that came together in one, because as you said, I had this crazy idea to cycle across a region and to know my actual place of birth a bit more and connect. This was and I've done it in 1 month instead of a year. But then I decided to make it a bit more challenging and serial in terms of if I do one municipality a day, that will take me a year, which means moving slower, so less distance every day, but in a slower way, both in terms of space and time, which gives you a really slow way of thinking as well. So something where you, because of running around from the other bit. So this was the initial idea. At the same time, I had this, obviously I wanted it to be an artistic project, and I was thinking I can't stay a year without music. So I decided to try to find, obviously, my main instrument is the double bass, contrabass or upright bass. Too big carried on a back, so I found a bass, and I thought, if I bring this, I'll have a way to keep my fingers going on a fretboard. And what a great idea if I could also create music on the go, inspired by the places. So I decided every day to, even if it's not a complete composition, just to play around thinking about the day, the place, anything that could give me inspiration. And so I decided to write a musical fragment for each day. The moment, not because of tiredness, of the days in which I didn't have time to write or to compose, but all the ideas are there. So I'm planning to complete the blog with all the missing days and musical fragments, which is already quite a big collection of stuff, as you said, stories and music. It's huge, but again, the final aim is to then assemble everything into a proper artistical product, a disc, and a book. So I think everything came not all of a sudden. Obviously, I thought about this project for years before then deciding, right, I'm going to make it. And every time I thought about it, a new element came about. For example, the fact of writing fragments and then doing it today. It came together with the post, and I decided to make it.
Wow. So were there any moments, or maybe early on or at any point where you thought like, what am I doing? Cause I mean, I'm sure, the climate's similar to here. So it probably, I don't know how much it rained, but I'm assuming you at least had some like bad weather or cold or too hot, cause you're so close to Africa at that point. Like, were there any moments where you just thought like, what is this crazy thing I'm doing?
Yeah, many. I mean, to be honest, the first I was so like excited that I didn't really think too much about what am I doing at the beginning. I thought it was crazy, but the adrenaline that came out doing it is really how that I'm gonna see. And obviously, as you said, there's been difficult moments because although we're really close to Africa, Sardinia in the winter can get really cold, and we had a very cold winter and rainy this year, a bit unusual. It was quite tough, and then summer was also tough because we had one of the longest summer ever. It was literally beginning of June till end of October, massive temperatures, so it was difficult, although my cycling happened in the morning every day, so I managed to avoid the hottest times in the day. But yeah, it's been quite hard for the climate, although living in the UK, in Britain, I was used to cycling in the rain and in the cold, so that wasn't too much of an issue. And the more I do it, towards the end, I thought, God, I can't believe I've make it. I'm finishing it. How did I do it? And now I'm thinking, God, how am I still here, like talking about it? It's been, the more I reflect on how I did it, and now that it's finished, it's like, how can I did it? It's very strange.
This episode is brought to you by D'Addario Strings. Our friends at D'Addario want to help listeners change their strings safely and efficiently, and they have a few tricks to help you achieve that. Each time the string winds around the peg, be sure that it lays neatly next to the previous coil as opposed to crossing over itself, which increases the risk of breaking. Wind each string from the middle of the peg outward, making sure never to rub up against the peg box wall, which also increases risk of breakage. Learn more at orchestral.daddario.com, and thank you so much for sponsoring the podcast. Every day when I sit down to practice, I get up my phone and I boot up Modacity, which is my practicing companion, and I have a specific routine I go through, and here is Modacity founder and CEO Mark Gelfo on what he does each day with Modacity.
What I do when I load Modacity every day is, if I don't have a playlist constructed already, what I do is I go in and I think, how long do I have to practice right now? Okay, I've got 40 minutes. Cool, I'm going to do 5 minutes on meditation, get my body state right. I'm going to do scales for 5 minutes, and I'm going to visualize, and I'm going to do this piece that I'm working on. You just set it up, see the budget, and follow the budget effortlessly by delegating that to the phone.
Letting my phone do all those logging details has been so great for my practicing. I can't recommend this app highly enough. Love it, love it, love it. Learn more at modacity.co, and we have a special offer if you go to our site for lifetime access to this app. It's so cool. Thank you so much for sponsoring the podcast, Modacity. At Upton Base, there is no B stock in terms of wood. Here's Gary and Eric from Upton on what happens when they encounter a flaw in the wood.
Rather than someone just looking at that piece of wood and saying, man, I got to throw that in the fireplace.
Yeah.
They go, my boss says I got to get this thing done, so they set that neck.
Yeah. And we've just learned over the years, if you got to question the piece of wood, it just goes in the dumpster.
Yeah, just get out of there.
It's reasons like that that make Upton such a hit among bassists worldwide. They have an army of raving fans. I'm one of them, by the way, and they just make wonderful basses. Whether you're just starting out and you're looking for an entry-level instrument or you're looking for the top-notch bass of your dreams, they will work with you throughout the process and get you an instrument you will love. UptonBass.com is the website, and thank you so much for sponsoring the podcast. I don't know if I can think of anybody who's done a project exactly like what you're doing, but I get so inspired by people that go through with something like that long term, and that you had this sort of musical daily practice in there too. Like no matter what, you pull out the bass uke and just sort of musically reflect. And I love people who show up and just sort of like, show up for work artistically, every day. I just find I get so inspired when I feel like, I don't want to pull my bass out of the case today. I just want to sit on the couch. I'm going to think of you and going across Italy for 14 months and playing every day. And I'm sure there must have been so many surprises and takeaways. And I know you met up with musicians across some people that you knew and some people that were new, but and there are probably way too many highlights of the trip. But Can you think of a couple of I'm sure there must have been some magic moments on that trip that just made you so happy to be doing it. Can you think of any real, top highlights from the whole journey?
For me, the most important highlights were the musical moments I had. But I want to tell you one, because although I met up with loads of musicians and I did some nice gigs with even important musicians locally, I still, because obviously they didn't really have musical experiences except for those that I had on my own. And there's been this incredible moment in which I cycled on top of this sort of limestone plateau in the middle of nowhere. It looked like being on the moon with white rocks. And it was a magical day, like really sunny and nice. And as I cycled, I saw this. There were only wild pigs around crossing the road, this country road, and there were some cows as well around, and I could hear their bells. And at this point, I decided, right, I'm gonna perform for them. So I actually climbed onto this white rock with my ukulele. I made a little video of myself, and the only audience, like in this sort of plateau, were wild animals. And I had a few improvisations, and I was thinking, right, this is also part of this journey, is playing to wild animals. So I remember this moment, and obviously that was the fragment of the day. So yeah.
Oh man, that is so cool. That's such a great. I'm gonna go hunt down that video. Do you have it up on Instagram or somewhere?
No, to be fair, all my videos, I mean, some of them are on Facebook. Many of them went into stories, but most of them are onto my GoPro. Obviously, all saved in a hard drive. But I still need to make them public. I didn't really have much time to edit videos during the trip. So 2020 is also time in which I will open I think a YouTube channel and upload all these magical moments. And I've got so many that aren't published now, but they will be soon, I hope. So stay tuned and follow up.
Oh, I will happily follow along and spread the word, and I can't wait. And I've been to Italy, on the continent. I've been to Florence and Rome and a bit. Never been to Sardinia. How much time had you spent there prior to this trip? Had you visited in the past? I know you have longtime family there, at least.
I am. Well, I am from there, and I spent. Until 34, I lived mainly there, apart from some years in the UK, some years I spent a year in Florence. But I grew up there and spent most of my adult life there. But to be fair, I mean, if you see it on the map, Sardinia is quite a small island, but then the territory is really wild at times, and it's very, they call it a microcontinent, because we have obviously beaches, but we have also mountains, it snows in the winter, and every village is separated to the other by normally a geographical obstacle that can be a mountain or a lake, so every village is a micro world. And so it's probably not the same as if you were in northern Italy, where all the villages, they are on a plain, so you take a road and you go to the next village. In Sardinia, to go to the next village, even if it's like 10K, probably you'll have a massive uphill and then a downhill and a lake. So it's quite a diverse land in terms of landscapes. And but obviously I knew it quite well. But to be fair, now that I've done all, I knew it probably 5%. And, it's my land. It's a small island, but if you decide, right, I'm going to travel in this way, you realize there's so much more to what you think you know.
Well, and what a great way to travel by bike, just where you're in there with the elements. It's fast enough that you can, I love walking too, but you cover a lot more territory on a bike. And I'm just, as you're talking about this, I'm thinking about like how little I know about where I live. Like even my little town of San Francisco, I'm still finding new things just walking around on foot. I can't, even if I expand it out, like it's there. And it must have been so fascinating, especially if you lived somewhere for so many years growing up there, and it's small, you probably would think it, but you must have a totally different perspective of the people of Sardinia, the towns, and the character. I just, when I think of Italy, I think of just towns loaded with character. It must have been a real experience. You must know that place. You got to write a travel book just on Sardinia. Hopefully that's going to happen.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I'm definitely going to write a travel book. I'm going to write a sort of narrative of my journey. I'm going to help out some people that work with, cycling tours in Sardinia, just to make some new, maybe possible paths and new possible ways of visiting Sardinia. So, the amount of knowledge on the island I've got now is very massive, and I've already been contacted by people who work in the territory with tourism, just to give my perspective and experience. So I found there will be things popping up in this 20, and obviously as a Sardinian, I'm really happy to showcase my land and to make it more visible across the world. So it's great.
Samuel Kolstein, who founded Kolstein and Sons back 70 years ago at this point, Sam was largely self-taught. Here's Barry Kolstein about how his father got into the business.
It was mainly self-taught, but I will pay homage to people that need to be paid homage. He did study a bit with Al Eisenstein, who was a great repairman in Manhattan. He was considered one of the top. And Al was very gracious. He allowed my father to sit at his side, watch him work. But a lot of it was self-taught. My father was very ingenious person. He really would look at a problem and figure out 5 ways of doing it, and then choose the right way always.
Ever since those early years, Kolstein and Sons has been working to solve problems for bass players, provide them with ever better instruments and new opportunities in terms of travel basses and cases and all sorts of things that we need as bass players. Thank you, Barry, and thank you, Kolstein, for everything that you do and for sponsoring the podcast. This episode is brought to you by Steve Swan String Bass. And Steve travels far and wide here in the Western United States. Here's Steve on where he goes and what some of the benefits of being able to travel like that are.
You travel with it. You're going up to Oregon. You're going up to Seattle.
Up to Seattle.
Yeah.
And back, out to Arizona. Wherever people want to see a selection, they don't have options, or if I have a line on some bases I want to check out and maybe buy or trade, I have the option. That's the beauty of me not being tied to a workbench in a shop.
Steve works with some of the San Francisco Bay Area's best professional bass luthiers, people like Nathaniel Rich, Alex Friedman, and many others, to get basses playing beautifully. When someone comes to me asking where to look for a bass, whether they're a student or professional, or they're coming through town and they want to try out a great selection of basses, I always send them to Steve. Learn more at steveswanstringbass.com. And thank you so much for sponsoring the podcast, Steve. You're like the perfect ambassador for for Sardinia, especially after being from there, but then especially doing this, exploring the culture in this really unique way. I live in this big city. I spend so little time these days in small towns. And it's at least, here in the States or some other countries I've explored, life, the pace of life, it's just amazing to me how different it is once you get out of the big cities. Like, what are the people like in these different regions of Sardinia? I don't even know what to ask about it. You probably have so many thoughts, but what are some of those? What was maybe surprising to you about some of these small towns, or maybe what did they have in common, or or the pace of life? Just what are some reflections on that?
I've been really surprised by how some places remote live 30 or 40 behind of the society. So, if you think about Italy, you think about Florence, Rome, Milan, you think about, being in Europe. I've been to San Francisco years ago, so I know San Francisco is a very sort of European feel city, so you have this in mind. In southern Italy, like Sicily, and if you go in Sardinia as well, in some small villages, you feel like thrown back in the past by 30, 40 years. For example, I mean, I've been in places and the first car that you see is a car from the 80s, still going with, or, people using motorbikes from the 70s. And you think, God, this is like 50 years ago now, but still running and still, despite of many laws that maybe, or actually, I remember trying to be in touch with you, but being in places where there weren't internet connections or like really poor telephone signals, people living really slowly, people that live with the products they have in the land. So people that live from their own fruit, veg, people that share. So sometimes you might find people that don't really work or that do part-time small jobs, but they know that there will be a sharing of food, for example, like a place with 120 inhabitants, they will probably share loads of things between them. If someone hasn't got a job, someone else will take care of some of his stuff. I mean, it's something that in the cities we don't experience anymore. So, I mean, I found that quite impressive. I mean, a sort of sense of community that we've lost in living in big cities. So obviously a slower pace, but also a sort of humanity that is, somehow lost in modern life.
I know you've only been off the road for a couple weeks, but does it feel weird? I mean, cause like I love travel. You're making me inspired to do something crazy, like right across the U.S. But the sort of a more adventurous travel I've done, it feels kind of weird to me sometimes getting back home and not having that. Is it strange to not be on a bike with your bass uke and meeting new people every day or a couple days? Like, what's that experience like getting off the road?
Yeah, it's strange. I mean, obviously, towards the end, I had also a sort of sense of finishing and trying to think about, reconnecting with some stuff that I really missed. One of them is now obviously my double bass, which I haven't played for a year, and I'm looking forward to going back into my daily practice routine. I've got a tendinitis now on my left arm, which I think that is the posture every day on my bike with, my forearms tense. So I'm trying to cure this tendinitis, so I can't go back into music practice now. But obviously, I missed all these things. So it's strange to be off the road, but at the same time, I'm willing to take some musical projects back, and now it's time to, produce the music, arrange it. So it's a new phase. It's been quite heavy at times to, even days in which I didn't feel like going out and I had to cycle. So to be fair, I was happy to have stopped that. Although I think it'll come again, this sort of wanting to be on the road, probably for a smaller project. I probably will keep doing these cycling things. It can be a sort of model for someone else, like to explore a place and to translate everything into music. I hope it will become a way of traveling to look for artistic inspiration. And I'll probably do it again, maybe just on a shorter scale.
Well, I can't wait to hear. I'm sure as you're on a trip like that, you might have thought about other places you could explore. So I can't wait to hear about, after a good long break and putting together, which I can't wait to check out the book and the video footage that you're going to have coming out and the music. It's really exciting. I'll send folks to because the project has a website. So it's project 377project.com is the website. And then you've got your own website too. So I'll link up to that. I'll link up to your Facebook. I'll link up to Instagram. When that YouTube channel comes out, I'll shout that out and follow along myself for sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah. What else? What else do you want to let any less? I could talk with you for like 9 hours about this because this is like the thing I dream about. But like any just kind of like overall lessons you learned about humanity or meeting new people or how to struggle through when you really don't want to get on that bike and ride up the steep hill or.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things I would recommend, even if it's not for a year, is what I did is I decided not to listen to music, not to bring any books with me, and not to watch TV. So for 14 months, my only influences were real things. So real people, real places. And I mean, especially for artists or musicians, it's quite easy to get sucked into watching videos, hearing music, which is absolutely essential for, getting ideas and things. But I think a period of just clearing out from influences, but just being out with real people and places and then taking them as a sort of way of finding inspiration is very liberating. For me, it has been also the approach with music. At times in my life, I've been too many intellectual about music, too cerebral, sometimes too technical. They're like studying a lot. But in this trip, I decided to just make music on an instinct base. So, a very natural way of approaching life, art, and music. And I think all the music that will come out of it will reflect this. So, I mean, advice on taking some time off, maybe even 4 days, 3 days, or a week, a month, and just reconnect with real things, real people. I've been on the social media loads for this project, but at the same time, I had my times off everything to appreciate real things. So that's one important message.
Sebastiano, oh my goodness, what a cool journey. This will undoubtedly be the first of many conversations about this and other projects. And boy, does that make me inspired, like I was saying, to go do something audacious like traveling Sardinia. And boy, what a natural person to kind of be connected with the Board of Tourism for Sardinia, as he was talking about. That's just so cool. I can't wait to hear more about this project and see what album unfolds from this. Doesn't that make you just want to get out and do something crazy? It does so for me. So links to everything we talked about, you can find that in the show notes. And Instagram in particular is a great place to follow along with him right now, just because you can see all of these cool stops. But definitely check out his YouTube, check out Facebook and his website. And again, that's all in the show notes. So thank you. Thank you for listening. Really appreciate it. Reach out to me, feedback@contrabassconversations.com, and let me know anything. Guest idea, that would be great. It takes me a while to get to them because it's just a long list, but I love hearing what people want to hear more of, who they would like to hear from, or just I'd like to hear people just, say hi, tell me about yourself, where you live, that kind of thing. You can subscribe to the show, which is free. Hopefully that's obvious with a podcast, but it's not always obvious. You can learn more about that and join our email list and our social media and all that kind of good stuff at contrabassconversations.com. Contrabass Conversations is produced by Michael Cooper, Steve Hinchy, Mitch Mooring, Trevor Jones, and Krista Copper. Krista has a wonderful podcast called The Backstage Creative. Definitely check that out. And Mitch is making award-winning basses in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. Learn more at mitchmooring.com. I'm your host, Jason Heath, and we will see you again soon for more life on the low end of the spectrum.